There is a planet in our solar system that nobody has ever seen, not once. Not with the biggest telescopes on Earth, not with space telescopes that can spot galaxies billions of miles away. And yet, scientists are almost sure it is out there, tugging on dozens of icy rocks like an invisible hand pulling on strings. Think about that for a second. We have taken pictures of planets circling other stars, stars so far away that their light left home before humans even learned to write. We have seen light from the very first galaxies that ever formed. But something the size of a planet, maybe 10 times bigger than Earth, could be hiding right here in our own cosmic backyard, and we cannot find it. For over 100 years, astronomers have hunted for this hidden world. They call it Planet 9. Survey after survey has come up empty. Telescope after telescope has swept the sky and found nothing. It sounds almost impossible that something this big could stay hidden for so long. But earlier this year, that might have changed. Scientists dug through old data from a space telescope that flew way back in the 1980s. They mixed it with newer information from a different telescope, and for the first time ever, they think they might have spotted it. So did they really find Planet 9? Or is this just another false alarm and a mystery that has fooled scientists for a century? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why this hidden planet has been so hard to catch, and what this brand new clue might mean. Before we get into the wild part of this story, here is something worth knowing. This mystery is still unsolved right now, today, while you're watching this. New clues keep showing up every single year, and the next big telescope built just for this hunt is already scanning the sky as we speak. If you want to be here the moment this case finally gets cracked, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We chase stories like this one until we get real answers, not just guesses. The strange trail of clues. To understand why scientists believe in a planet they cannot even see, we need to rewind the clock and talk about the edge of our solar system. It is a place unlike anywhere near Earth. It is so far away that if you could travel at the speed of light, the fastest speed in the entire universe, it would still take you more than 8 hours just to get there. That is billions and billions of miles of cold, empty darkness. Way out in that darkness are strange icy objects that circle the sun. Scientists call them trans-Neptunian objects, which is just a fancy way of saying rocks that orbit past Neptune. The very first one of these was found back in 1930 by a young astronomer named Clyde Tombaugh. You have probably heard of it. It is called Pluto. For a long time, Pluto seemed like it was all alone out there. Then, 60 years later, scientists found a second one. After that, the discoveries did not stop. Today, we have found almost 5,000 of these icy worlds. But the discovery that really changed everything happened in 2003. A scientist named Mike Brown, along with his team, found a small icy world called Sedna. It was smaller than Pluto, but its orbit was bizarre. Instead of moving in a normal circle around the sun like Earth does, Sedna traced a huge, stretched-out oval path. If Sedna had been the only weird one, scientists might have shrugged and called it a coincidence, but it was not the only one. As astronomers kept searching, they found more and more of these icy rocks with strange, tilted, stretched-out orbits. Some of them even moved backward compared to the planets. Others crossed paths with Neptune in ways that should not happen by chance. Something was clearly pulling on these objects. But what? Scientists ran the numbers. They studied the orbits of 17 of these icy worlds and used math to check how likely it was that all of them just happened to line up this way by random chance. The answer was shocking. The odds were about 1 in 1 million. That is like flipping a coin and getting heads 40 times in a row. It practically never happens on its own. So if it was not random chance, something had to be causing it. And the explanation that fit best was a hidden planet. A big one. Big enough to use its gravity to bend and twist the paths of all these distant icy worlds, like a puppet master pulling strings from somewhere in the dark. That is how Planet 9 was born, not as something anyone had seen, but as an idea that explained a trail of strange clues left scattered across the edge of our solar system. Scientists were not just guessing, they were following evidence, the same way a detective follows footprints, even when the person who left them is nowhere in sight. But here is the twist. Knowing something should be there and actually finding it are two very different things. And it turns out, finding this planet is way harder than anyone expected. Why nobody can just point and look. You might be thinking, okay, so scientists have a rough idea of where this planet should be. Why can they not just point a telescope at that spot and take a picture? It sounds simple. It is actually incredibly difficult, and the reason why is kind of mind-blowing. Here's the problem. Planets do not glow on their own like stars do. A planet only shows up in a normal photo because it reflects sunlight, kind of like how the moon looks bright at night even though it makes no light of its own. But sunlight gets weaker and weaker the farther it travels. And when that faint sunlight bounces off a faraway planet and has to travel all the way back to Earth, it gets weaker again on the way back. double the distance from the sun, and the amount of light coming back to us does not just get a little dimmer. It drops off incredibly fast, way faster than you would expect. Now picture how far away Planet 9 might be. Scientists think it could be hundreds of times farther from the sun than Earth is. At that kind of distance, any sunlight bouncing off it would be so faint it is almost like trying to spot a single lit match from the other side of a country on a cloudy night through a pair of foggy glasses. Several huge telescope projects have already tried and failed. Big Sky surveys with names like the Dark Energy Survey and other wide-field telescopes spent years scanning huge chunks of the sky. They were amazing at finding all sorts of space objects, but none of them ever spotted a single solid clue pointing to Planet 9. Not one. So, a group of scientists decided to try something completely different. Instead of looking for reflected sunlight, they thought about heat. Here's the cool part. Every planet, even ones far from the sun, gives off a tiny bit of its own heat, kind of like how your body is always warm even in a cold room. This heat shows up as infrared light, which is a type of light our eyes cannot see, but special telescopes can. A team of scientists in Taiwan, led by a professor and his PhD student, decided to hunt for Planet 9 using this heat trick instead of chasing reflected sunlight. They pulled up 2 giant infrared sky surveys. One was taken all the way back in 1983 by a space telescope called IRAS. This telescope flew above Earth's atmosphere and used a sensor cooled to almost the coldest temperature physically possible, colder than anywhere on Earth, so it could pick up the faintest whispers of heat from space. It spotted over 350,000 new objects during its mission. The second survey came from a different space telescope launched in 2006, which had even sharper vision and could see slightly different wavelengths of infrared light. Together, these 2 surveys covered more than 2 million objects across the sky. The scientists' plan was simple to explain but brutal to actually do. If Planet 9 was really out there, it would have moved just a tiny bit between 1983 and 2006. So the team compared every single object between the 2 surveys, hunting for the tiny handful that shifted position in exactly the way a slow, faraway planet would shift. Everything else got tossed out. This is where the story gets really interesting. The photo, nobody expected. Out of more than 2 million objects, the scientists narrowed things down using math, physics, and a whole lot of patience. They were not just looking for anything that moved. They needed something that moved at exactly the right, painfully slow speed a planet at that mind-boggling distance should move. They calculated it should barely creep across the sky over the span of more than 20 years. They ended up with just 13 possible candidates. Then, one by one, a researcher checked each one by eye, comparing the old picture to the new picture over and over again. 12 of them were ruled out. 1 was left. Just 1. If you looked at this final image yourself, you probably would not be impressed at first. In the old 1983 photo, there's a tiny cluster of just 7 pixels in the corner that are slightly warmer than the black background around them. That is it. 7 warm pixels. Then, in the newer photo taken more than 20 years later, that same little warm smudge had moved. It shifted a distance equal to about 1.5 times the width of the full moon in our sky. Which sounds small, but remember, we are talking about something that might be hundreds of times farther from the sun than Earth. For something that far away to visibly shift position at all is a big deal. On its own, a handful of warm pixels means almost nothing. But when you understand the whole story behind it, the years of searching, the math, the 2 space telescopes decades apart, that tiny smudge suddenly feels like it could be one of the biggest space discoveries in 100 years. Could this really be the first ever photo of Planet 9? Nobody is popping champagne just yet. Some of the scientists who first predicted Planet 9, including the team that started this whole search back in 2003, have looked at this new candidate and raised an eyebrow. The tilt of its orbit does not perfectly match what their original models expected. It is close, but not a perfect fit. Space detectives do not celebrate over almost. Still, this is easily the strongest clue anyone has found in the entire history of this hunt. And the wild part is, this was not even a giant, all-powerful super telescope built specifically for this job. This was old data, some of it more than 40 years old, dug up and studied in a brand new way, kind of like discovering a hidden clue in a decades-old photograph that everyone had already looked at 100 times before and somehow missed. So if this really might be it, how do we find out for sure? That question leads us straight into the next chapter of this mystery, one that is unfolding right now. The machine that could end the mystery. Here is the good news. We do not have to wait long to get a real answer, because the perfect tool for the job just switched on. It is called the Vera Rubin Observatory, and it might be the single best planet hunting machine humans have ever built. Its camera sensor is the largest ever created for astronomy, and it is so powerful it can capture objects that are far, far dimmer than what older wide-sky telescopes could ever detect. Scientists working on the Planet 9 search have said flat out that If you handed them a giant pile of money and told them to go build the perfect telescope, to either find this planet or prove once and for all that it does not exist, they would build exactly this observatory. This telescope is now running something called a 10-year survey of the entire night sky, scanning over and over, night after night, collecting a staggering amount of new data every single time it points up at the stars. Somewhere in all that data, if Planet 9 is really out there, this machine has a real shot at spotting it for certain. Not as a smudge of 7 warm pixels, but as a confirmed, tracked, undeniable object. And here is a fun little detail. The same team that found this new candidate did not just stop after finding one. Using the same heat tracking trick, they went back through their infrared data and found 2 more possible candidates worth investigating. The hunt is not over. It might just be heating up, literally. But what if, after all this searching, the answer turns out to be no planet at all? It might sound strange, but there are actually a few other explanations that could account for all those weird, stretched out orbits at the edge of our solar system. One idea is that instead of one single giant planet, there could be a huge ring of smaller icy objects way out past Neptune, all pulling on each other with their combined gravity. If enough of these objects exist together, their group gravity could bend orbits in a similar way, kind of like how a big flock of birds can move together in one smooth, swooping shape without a single leader guiding them. Another wild idea is that long ago, either a passing star, or maybe even a strange leftover object from the birth of the universe, possibly even a tiny black hole no bigger than a soccer ball, brushed past our solar system and gave those distant orbits a shove that still shows up today, like a scar from a hit and run millions of years ago. And a smaller group of scientists even argue that maybe we do not need a hidden object at all, and instead, our basic understanding of gravity itself needs a small tweak. Every single one of these ideas is testable, and the Vera Rubin Observatory is the machine that can help scientists check every single one of them. Within just a few years, we could go from a mystery that has confused astronomers for over a century to a clear, confirmed answer, one way or another. Personally, there's something exciting about the idea of the solar system growing back to 9 worlds. A lot of us grew up learning about 9 planets before Pluto got demoted, so there is something almost poetic about the number 9 sneaking its way back into the story, just with a brand new, giant, mysterious member of the family. Whatever the truth turns out to be, we are closer to an answer than we have ever been. And honestly, that is the best part about space. Even after thousands of years of looking up, there is still something enormous hiding right under our noses, waiting to be found. If this story blew your mind even a little, smash that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on notifications so you do not miss it the moment this mystery finally gets solved for real. We have also got videos covering other strange worlds hiding at the edge of our solar system, so go check those out next. Before you go, here's a question for you. If scientists prove Planet 9 is real, what do you think we should name it? Drop your idea in the comments. I want to see what you come up with.